I never thought I'd be sitting here, typing this out to strangers on the internet, but I guess that's the only place where I can unload all of this without completely falling apart. My name doesn't matter, but I'm 19 and so is she, my best friend, the girl at the center of this entire mess. We've known each other since we were kids. She was always the wild one, a little rebellious, the kind of girl who tested boundaries but somehow never got caught. I was the quieter one, the safe friend her parents tolerated because I was studious, polite, and never got into trouble. But over the years, our friendship became something deeper. Not exactly romantic. Not officially anyway, but there were feelings. On my side, definitely. On hers. I thought so too, at least in moments when she'd lean on me a little too long, laugh at my stupidest jokes, or let her guard down late at night when we'd talk about life. A few months back, though, I started noticing changes. She was distracted, her phone buzzing late at night, with messages she'd quickly hide. She started dressing differently. Not in a way that bothered me, but in a way that felt like she was trying to impress someone. I asked her about it once, and she brushed me off with a laugh, saying I was being paranoid. I didn't press it. I trusted her. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have even imagined, was that she was seeing someone. Not just someone, but a man almost twice our age. A man who had a wife. A man who should have known better. That's where this story really begins. It was late one evening when I first noticed something was seriously wrong. She'd been quieter than usual for weeks, canceling plans, avoiding eye contact, brushing off my attempts to hang out. I thought maybe she was just stressed about school or family. But then one night, she showed up at my apartment door out of nowhere. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. I let her in, and she just collapsed on my couch. For a while, she didn't say anything, just stared at the floor, twisting her hands like she was trying to wring the truth out of them. Finally, she whispered something I could barely hear. "I need to tell you something, but you can't hate me." That's never a good way to start a conversation. I braced myself, heart pounding. She didn't drag it out. She just blurted it. "I'm pregnant." The words hit me like a brick to the chest. At first, I thought maybe she was joking or testing me, but the look on her face told me it was real. My brain scrambled for explanations. Pregnant? By who? We weren't together. Not officially, anyway, so I knew it wasn't me. Then she broke down completely, sobbing into her hands, and that's when she told me. It wasn't just anyone. It wasn't some random guy from a party. It was a married man. Someone who had promised her love and freedom, and whatever other lies guys like him spin. And the worst part, he'd already disappeared. Cut off contact. Blocked her. Gone. That night, sitting in my living room, I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. When the shock settled enough for me to actually speak, I asked the only question that made sense. Why? Why him? She winced like I'd slapped her. Through tears, she tried to explain. She said he made her feel seen and mature, like she wasn't just some kid. He told her things like she was different, special, worth risking everything for. She believed him. At 19, those words cut deep, especially when you've got a strict father breathing down your neck and no real freedom to make your own choices. "I know it was stupid," she kept saying. "I know. But he promised me he'd leave her. He said we'd run away together." Every sentence felt like a knife twisting deeper. It wasn't just that she'd been with someone else. It was that she'd trusted a man who used her, a man who'd played with her life like it was some casual game. I asked her if she'd thought about what would happen if she got pregnant. She shook her head, crying harder, saying she thought he was careful, that it just wouldn't happen. Naive, reckless, but also just heartbreakingly human. Then she grabbed my arm, desperate. "Please don't hate me. You're the only person I can tell. If my parents find out, my dad will literally kill me. And if anyone else knows, I'll be ruined. I just sat there, stunned, my heart racing between anger and pity. I wanted to yell at her for being so careless. I wanted to cry with her, because she looked so broken. I wanted to fix it. But how the hell do you fix this? And then she said the words that would change everything. Can you tell them you're the father? When she asked me that, when she actually looked me in the eyes and begged me to lie, to put my own name on her mistake, I felt my whole body go cold. At first, I thought she couldn't be serious. Me? Pretend I'm the father of a child that isn't mine? A child made by some coward who ran away the moment things got hard? It sounded insane, but she wasn't joking. Her voice cracked, her hands clutched at mine, and she whispered, "Please, you don't understand. My dad will lose it. He'll kick me out. Or worse." And that's when the storm hit me. I felt angry. Angry at her for putting me in this position. Angry at that bastard for ruining her life. Angry at myself for caring so much when I had every right to walk away. I felt hurt, because part of me had always hoped maybe one day it would be me and her. That if she ended up pregnant, it'd be with someone who loved her, not a married man who used her like a secret. I felt sad, so unbearably sad, watching the girl I loved tremble in front of me, broken, ashamed, and terrified of her own family. But I also felt something else I didn't want to admit, a flicker of responsibility, not because it was my child. It wasn't, but because she had no one else. She had me, and as twisted as it was, I couldn't just stand there and let her drown. That night, after she left, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, torn apart inside. My mind kept cycling through the same questions. If I say yes, am I ruining my own life for her mistake? If I say no, am I abandoning her when she needs me the most? And why the hell does it hurt so much that she gave herself to someone else? It felt like my chest was caving in, like betrayal and love were sitting on my shoulders at the same time, pulling me in opposite directions. The next morning, I met her at the park. She looked even worse than the night before, pale, puffy-eyed, like the weight of the world was crushing her. She didn't even say hello. She just asked quietly, "Have you decided?" I swear, my chest physically hurt in that moment. Every part of me wanted to scream no. This isn't my responsibility. You made this choice. You deal with it. But when I opened my mouth, the words didn't come out that way. I told her, "If it keeps you safe, I'll do it." Her whole body sagged with relief. She grabbed me, hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe, whispering, "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're saving my life." But inside, I wasn't relieved. I wasn't even proud. I felt trapped, like I'd just signed away my own future for something I had no part in creating. Still, what was I supposed to do? Let her walk into her strict father's house alone, carrying a married man's child? That would have been the end of her. So I made the choice, not because it was fair, not because it was right, but because when someone you care about is dangling over the edge, sometimes you grab their hand, even if it means you're going to fall too. On the walk home, though, reality set in. If I went through with this, it wouldn't just be a small lie. It would mean facing her parents and telling them I was the father. Carrying that lie in front of everyone, friends, family, maybe even the whole town. Living with the guilt every single day, knowing the truth. I felt sick. My hands shook, but the decision had been made. And from that moment on, the line between loyalty and self-destruction blurred completely. The first time I faced her parents, I realized just how high the stakes really were. Her dad, I don't even know how to describe him. Strict, terrifying, the kind of man whose approval, or disapproval, could shape your entire life. He had that presence where one glare could silence a room. And now I was about to tell him that I, his daughter's best friend, was supposedly responsible for a child. Her mom, on the other hand, was quieter, worried, but I could see the judgment lurking behind her eyes. We sat in their living room, the air thick with tension. I tried to steady my voice, tried to act calm, tried to seem okay, when inside I was trembling. I need to tell you something, I started, every word heavier than the last. I'm the father. Her father's reaction was immediate. His face went red, hands clenching on the armrests. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit something. Her mother gasped, covering her mouth, tears brimming. The room felt like it had shrunk, the walls pressing in. Her dad shouted, demanded to know how it happened, when, why. I repeated the story carefully, skipping nothing about responsibility, about how we'd both made mistakes, but leaving out the truth about the married man. I felt my stomach twist with every lie, every word that protected her, but tied me tighter to a life I hadn't chosen. Through it all, she sat silently, trembling, hiding behind me. She whispered apologies that no one heard, and I realized painfully that this lie, this twisted act of protection, was just as brutal as the truth would have been. When the storm finally calmed, her dad retreated to his study, fists still tight, muttering about mistakes and discipline. Her mother hugged her, crying quietly, and I felt hollow. I'd saved her, yes, but at the cost of becoming a target for her father's wrath. And worst of all, I knew the truth was still out there, waiting like a ticking bomb. After that night, everything changed, but nothing felt different at all. Outwardly, I was the hero, the one who stepped up to take responsibility. But inside, I was drowning. Every time I looked at her, every time she smiled or cried, I felt a mix of love, sorrow, and a deep, gnawing anger at her, at him, at the world. We started pretending together. At school, at home, in front of friends. I was the father, the one who had to act like I was proud and ready. But nobody knew the truth, and the weight of that secret was suffocating. I couldn't tell anyone how I felt. Not a word, not a single hint. If I did, it would shatter everything. Sometimes, late at night, I'd watch her sleep or stare out the window and wonder, how had it all gone so wrong? She was my best friend. I loved her, yes, but not in that way she needed. And now I was bound to her in the most twisted way possible. I hated him, the married man who ran away, who left her to face everything alone. I hated the world that had forced us into this lie. And I hated myself for loving her enough to carry it with her, even when it broke me. The lie was supposed to protect her, but it had turned into a cage, locking me in, keeping me from breathing, from moving forward. And no matter how much I wanted to, there was no way out without destroying her. For a while, it felt like we could keep the lie going. We played our parts perfectly. Me as the responsible father, her as the scared but grateful girl. But nothing stays hidden forever. It started small. A slip of the tongue here, a hesitation there. People began asking questions I couldn't fully answer. Teachers noticed. She seemed distant, worried, like she was carrying a burden too heavy for her age. Friends commented on how quiet she had become. Every conversation was a minefield, every glance a reminder that the truth could explode at any moment. Even between us, cracks were forming. She would cry at night, whispering guilt and fear, while I tried to comfort her without letting her see how broken I was. And sometimes in moments when no one else was around, she would look at me with a mix of desperation and longing, as if I could magically fix everything. I wanted to scream. I can't, but I didn't. Because if I did, she'd have no one. And that thought alone kept me trapped in the lie. One night, I realized the worst part. I wasn't just pretending for her parents or the world. I was pretending for myself. I wanted to believe that by protecting her, by being her shield, I was doing something noble. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself just as much as everyone else. And the fear, the constant, gnawing fear, was unbearable. What if the truth came out? What if her father found out the real story? What if the man who got her pregnant returned? Every day, it felt like walking on a razor's edge, and I was bleeding inside. The constant fear of being exposed became unbearable. Every phone notification made me jump. Every knock at the door, every text, every stranger's glance felt like it could unravel everything. Then one afternoon, it almost did. She got a message from an unknown number, and I saw her freeze. Her hands shook as she read it. It was him, the married man. He had somehow found her number again, asking to meet, claiming he wanted to talk things through. I felt my blood run cold. The world I'd built with her, the fragile lie we were holding together, could crumble in an instant. I wanted to grab her phone, delete the message, make it all disappear. But I didn't. She needed to handle this herself. That night, she broke down. She admitted she wanted to see him, to understand why he disappeared, to hear some twisted explanation. I felt my stomach knot with rage. How could she even consider it after everything? And yet, I couldn't stop her. I knew I had to stay, to be her anchor, even if it tore me apart. So we sat in silence, holding hands, knowing that the moment he showed up, everything would change. For the first time, I realized that this wasn't just about a lie anymore. This was about survival, about protecting her from a man who never deserved her trust, and maybe about protecting myself from the storm that was coming. A week later, he finally showed up. I hadn't slept properly in days, every scenario playing in my head. She was terrified, and so was I, but for different reasons. She feared what he would say, what he would do. I feared what I would do. He arrived at a coffee shop near our school, looking smug and casual, like he hadn't destroyed her life. She went to meet him, trembling, and I followed, just close enough to step in if it got ugly. He started with empty apologies, excuses, promises he never intended to keep. He spoke as if he had done her some kind of favor, like he had been a hero in the story of her life. I wanted to shout at him, to shake him until he realized the wreckage he'd left behind. She tried to reason with him, to demand answers, but he deflected, smiled, and left her with more questions than she started with. And as he walked away, I realized something. He would never take responsibility. He would never care. When she turned to me, tears streaming, I saw her need for protection, for stability, for someone who would actually be there. And I knew then, more than ever, why I had stayed in this lie. Not because I wanted to be a father, not because I wanted to be her savior, but because no one else could. We walked home in silence, the weight of the confrontation settling over us. She clung to my arm, exhausted, scared, and broken, and I held her tighter, promising myself I would carry this burden as long as she needed me to. After that day, things between us changed. The lie had bonded us in ways I hadn't anticipated, but it had also driven a wedge between who we were and who we had to be. She started depending on me for everything, emotional support, protection, guidance. But I could feel the tension building inside me. I loved her, yes, but not in the way the lie demanded. Every touch, every smile, every thank you reminded me that I was trapped in a role I hadn't chosen. At night, we would lie in our separate rooms, texting softly so no one else would know we were still talking. Sometimes I caught her staring at me, searching for comfort, for reassurance, and I felt both proud and crushed. Proud that I could help her survive, crushed because it wasn't enough. I couldn't fix the past, and I couldn't promise the future. Arguments started to happen, small at first, then bigger. She would lash out, blaming herself, blaming me, blaming the world. I would respond with patience, trying to calm her, but my own frustration leaked out in quiet sighs, cold stares, or sharp words I immediately regretted. It was like we were dancing on broken glass. Every step could cut us. Every moment of closeness came with the fear that one day the truth would spill and we'd both be shattered. And yet, despite everything, I couldn't let go. I couldn't leave her alone to face her father, the town, or the consequences of a married man's selfishness. I stayed because even in pain, even in exhaustion, I couldn't abandon her. Months passed, and the lie grew heavier with every day. Each secret I kept felt like a brick on my chest, pressing down harder with every breath. I started noticing things, her sudden silences, her nervous glances when her parents brought up the future, my own trembling hands when someone mentioned families or responsibility. Everywhere we went, I felt like we were on stage, performing a play we had no script for. Friends congratulated us on how strong we were, how mature we were for our age, and I wanted to tell them to shut up, because none of it was real. It was all a lie stitched together with fear, guilt, and desperation. Some nights, I would lie awake, imagining what it would be like if the truth came out. Her father screaming, her mother crying, the town whispering, and worst of all, her looking at me and realizing that I hadn't actually been her protector in the way they all thought. I wanted to tell someone, anyone, but I couldn't. The weight of protecting her, of keeping her safe, had become my identity. And in a twisted way, I started to forget who I was before all of this. I realized then that the lie was no longer just a shield for her. It had become a prison for me. And every time I smiled for her, every time I said, "It's okay," I felt the walls of that prison tightening, reminding me that there was no going back. Amid all the fear and tension, there were rare moments that almost felt like freedom. Moments when she laughed without fear, when she trusted me enough to let her guard down, when we could pretend, even for a few minutes, that the world outside didn't exist. One evening, we sat on the roof of her apartment building, watching the sun dip behind the city skyline. She rested her head on my shoulder, quietly thanking me again for being there, for protecting her. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to carry this alone, that I wasn't the hero, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just held her, letting her lean on me, letting her believe what she needed to believe to survive. And in that silence, I felt a fragile kind of hope. Maybe, somehow, we could get through this without everything falling apart. Maybe, just maybe, I could help her find a way to live with dignity, even if it meant living with this lie. But hope was always fragile. A single misstep, a single message from him, a single glance from her parents, and it could all shatter in an instant. And yet, those fleeting moments of peace were what kept me going. Even if it hurt me, even if it broke me, I clung to them. Because in those moments, I could almost forget the betrayal, almost forget the truth, almost forget the lie I was living. It all came crashing down one rainy evening. Her father had discovered a message on her phone, not from me, but from someone else, and he started asking questions I couldn't answer without revealing the truth. Panic hit me like a punch to the chest. I could see her trembling next to me, her eyes wide with fear, and I realized we were on the verge of being exposed. Her dad's voice was sharp, unforgiving. "Who is this? Explain this right now." My heart raced, and for the first time, I felt completely powerless. I had carried this lie for months, held the weight of her secret, and now it was slipping through my fingers. She looked at me, silently pleading, her trust in me absolute. I took a deep breath, feeling every ounce of anger, fear, and love collide inside me. "It's me," I said, my voice shaking. I'm the one she's talking about." The room went silent, her father's glare piercing me. I could see her mother's tears, her shock. I felt my chest tighten, knowing I had just tied myself even deeper into this web of deception. But I couldn't let her face their wrath alone. Not after everything. It was the breaking point. Not just for her, not just for me, but for the fragile world we had been living in. Everything we had held together was on the edge of collapsing, and we had no choice but to hold on, even if it destroyed us. After the storm, life didn't magically get easier. Her parents were furious, scared, confused, but they eventually realized she wasn't alone. I stayed by her side, the weight of the lie now a shared burden, no longer a secret I carried alone. I learned things I'll never forget. The depth of fear a person can carry, the fragility of trust, and the complicated ways love can manifest. I learned that sometimes protecting someone means making impossible choices, and sometimes the right thing to do is not the easiest. I also learned about betrayal. Not just hers, not just his, but mine too. I had betrayed my own truth, my own feelings, in order to keep her safe. I had sacrificed pieces of myself that I may never get back. And yet, I don't regret it. Because when someone's world falls apart, sometimes all you can do is stand there and try to hold the pieces together. If there's advice I could give to anyone in a situation like this, it would be this. Love responsibly, speak honestly, and never underestimate the weight of a secret. But most importantly, sometimes being there, simply being there, is enough. It might break you, it might hurt you, but it can also save someone else. We survived in our own messy, painful way. And in the aftermath, I realized that survival isn't about perfection. It's about staying human, even when the world forces you into lies.